more on the truth which is really discussed and proved with competence. What I mean is that if we are preparing areas of studies or whatever on one question, it has to be made with very strict and very strong competence. For instance, the documents of the bishops, we were speaking about the bishops, are they really all competence on all issues? It's very important to say that we don't agree with corruption, but then to pinpoint which point, how it works, and so on. Because it's that condition of competence will make what you say really trustworthy and will be credible. For that, the work of newspapers and journalists is very, very important, but they have to be very, very competent. And if they are very competent, if they have good analysis, I think they can have a real action to help people to understand what's going on. Because if it's all, nice or complicated, then nobody understands. But if it's really good analysis and competence, it helps people to know where to go.
Thank you. Last question, please. It's past 12 already, but we can have one last. Thank you.
Magandang umaga po, Fathers. Ako po si Marilu Mercado, batch 1980 po, batch nila Father Jet, Father Bobby, Father Danny Wang. Kung magtataka kayo, yung batch namin, marami pong pare, maraming lawyers, maraming naglilingkod sa ating pamahalaan. Nung iniisip ko kung bakit, kasi nung mga panahon po namin, nung batch 77 hanggang 81, ang immersion program ay 2 months. So ako po ay nadala sa Calaca, Batangas, naglingkod sa mga sugar farmers. At utang na loob ko kay Father Vasquez at kay Father Riley, kung bakit hanggang ngayon, pagising ko sa umaga, ang lagi kong iniisip, kung paano maglingkod para sa mahihirap. Ang nakuha kong sagot dyan ngayon, kahit po nasa pribado akong nagtatrabaho, nasa board po ako ng Ateneo Alumni Scholars Association. So, pinaglilingkuran ko po yung mga scholar ng Ateneo. Ang worry ko po, sa mga panahong ngayon, parang yung immersion program ng Ateneo, naging over the weekend na lang daw. So, parang wala pong masyadong impact sa mga estudyante. 4 po ang anak ko, yung 2 nakatapos na here in Ateneo, graduates na sila. So naririnig ko po sa mga pag-uusap nila, ngayong graduate na sila, na hindi ganun kalaki yung impact ng paglilingkod sa bayan kesa nung mga panahon namin. Ano po kaya ang pwedeng gawin ng paaralan para dito?
Father Robert, some quick answers.
Siguro, 2 bagay lang. Una, sa tingin ko, medyo hahamunin ko yung konklusyon na yon na yung mga kabataan ngayon, lalong-lalo na parang nagkukulang, lalong-lalo na sa pagbababad, sa mahihirap at iba pa. No? Siguro, kung bilangin yung mga araw, totoo yun. Pero yung karanasan ko, lalong-lalo na sa pagtuturo dito sa Ateneo, no? Na ibang-iba yung konteksto ngayon. Noon, nung lumaki tayo, nung nasa Ateneo tayo, ang pinaglalaban natin, yung diktadura, no? Babagsak ang diktadura at iba pa. Ngayon, iba yung mga hamon. No? At medyo, minsan, napapaisip din ako gano'n, no? Bakit yung mga estudyante ngayon hindi mahilig mag-rally at iba pa. Pero natatanong ko rin sarili ko, yung may tawag ngayon. At napapahanga naman ako kung nakikita ko yung mga estudyante, yung mga proyekto nila, yung mga negosyo at iba pa na talagang nakalaan para sa mahihirap. No? So, sa tingin ko, mahalagang hamon pa rin yung pagbababad at pagkakaroon ng konkretong karanasan kasama ng mga maralita. Pero siguro dapat mulat din tayo sa panibagong konteksto kung paano dapat isagawa yung pagbababad ngayon.
Maraming salamat, Father Robert. Thank you, Father Pierre, Father Robert, for your presentation, your time, and your expertise in this morning's panel. We'd like to present some humble token of our appreciation. Thank you. Some reminders. During lunch break, we invite you to visit the several booths outside at the grade school campus, including San Miguel booths, which offer free food and drinks. free food and drinks. We'd like to invite the speakers to have lunch at the Heritage Room. Please consult your program pamphlets. The next panel will be at 2:00 p.m. One panel will be held here, the other at Singson Hall. That will be the Alumni and Government panel. Thank you very much for coming.
So thank you very much for joining us for this afternoon session. There are actually two panels. The other panel for government, Ateneans in government is in Singson Hall. So our panel is made up of our 4 speakers. Before we start the discussion this afternoon, I'd just like to remind the audience that the theme of this year's festival, which is entitled Lahing Loyola Para sa Kapwa, the objectives for this is really to articulate once more the spirit and tradition of St. Ignatius and the Jesuits. But because we have very distinguished Ateneans with us, we'd also like to discover with them how Ignatian spirituality is lived out in the workplace, especially in a difficult place like government. And so we hope at the end of this session that we will become clearer about the identity of the Atenean who's now gone down from the hill and who has been tested and who has to live Ignatian values and spirituality amidst all the tests. So first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Tonette Palma Angeles. I'm now in charge of the professional schools, and I will act as moderator for this afternoon's discussion. We have 4 speakers today. We start with the one and only lady in the panel. Maria Josefina Belmonte has an MA in Archaeology from the Institute of Archaeology in the University College London, MA in Museum Studies from the University of Leicester, did I pronounce it correctly, in the United Kingdom, and of course, a Bachelor of Arts in Social Sciences from the Ateneo de Manila. So by profession, she is an archaeologist and museum manager. As a participant of the Jesuit Volunteers of the Philippines, Vice Mayor Belmonte became a teacher at San Isidro High School from 1992 to 1993, where she taught social studies, religion, and youth development training. While teaching in Bukidnon, she initiated improvements in livelihood of the local community, including the construction of new roads in the area, and assisted in the administration of the school, and also headed the high school social studies department. From May 1994 to 1995, Vice Mayor Belmonte was elected treasurer of JVP's Board of Trustees. As a public servant, Vice Mayor Belmonte also serves as presiding officer of the Quezon City Council. During her leadership, the Department of Interior and Local Governments, or DILG, awarded the 18th Quezon City Council as the most outstanding Sangguniang Panglungsod in the National Capital Region, besting 15 other cities. Vice Mayor Belmonte heads the QC Tourism Development Program, and she is the project proponent of the QC Museum, which will rise at the Quezon City Memorial Circle. She is also the chairperson of the Congressional Spouses Foundation, Incorporated. Vice Mayor Belmonte has been a staunch advocate of women and children's rights. She has led the 18th City Council in the passage of the QC Children's Code, which has become a landmark ordinance of the city. She also established the Quezon City Protection Center, a hospital-based one-stop crisis intervention for victims of gender violence and abuse. Our second speaker is Justice Arturo Brion. Associate Justice Arturo Brion graduated from the Ateneo Law School in 1974, cum laude and class valedictorian. He topped the 1974 bar examinations with a grade of 91.65%. Mahirap na ho ngayon yung 91.65%, di ba? He spent his high school in the former Ateneo de San Pablo in 1962, and in March 2008, he was appointed to the Supreme Court as Associate Justice. Prior to this, he had been Secretary of Labor and Employment, Associate Justice of the Court of Appeals, and Undersecretary of Foreign Affairs. He has taught law in Ateneo and FEU. Our third speaker is a good friend, Undersecretary Lino Rivera. Undersecretary Rizalino Lino Rivera graduated from Ateneo de Manila High School in 1979. In 2010, he was appointed by President Aquino as Undersecretary for Regional Operations of the Department of Education. Prior to his work in government, Lino was engaged for many years in organizational development and strategic management for several corporations, community-based enterprises, NGOs, and church organizations. He was also part of the faculty of the Ateneo Graduate School of Business for 15 years. At the Department of Education, he has prioritized addressing the resource gaps in classrooms, teachers, and textbooks, especially in poor regions all over the country. Our last speaker for this afternoon is Attorney Francis Tolentino, who is a philosophy major. He graduated in 1980 from Ateneo de Manila. In 1984, he obtained his law degree also from the Ateneo. In July 2010, he was appointed by President Aquino as chairman of the Metropolitan Development Authority, or MMDA. MMDA is tasked to supervise and coordinate metro-wide services of Metro Manila without prejudice to the autonomy of the affected 17 local government units. Prior to this, he was appointed, then elected, as mayor of Tagaytay City for 3 consecutive terms and was president of the League of Cities of the Philippines. He also holds graduate degrees in laws, public administration, and national security administration. Ladies and gentlemen, please let's give a big hand to our 4 speakers. Our first speaker, Vice Mayor Joy Belmonte. All of them will have 15 to 20 minutes, and after that, you can ask them questions.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon to all of my co-panelists here this afternoon, my friend Yusek Lino Rivera, Justice Brion, and of course, Chairman Tolentino, and Ms. Tonette Angeles. It is a pleasure and an honor for me to address all of you here on this very special occasion. And it is always very scary to be the first speaker, and it's scarier to be a speaker here in the Ateneo. I'm never terrified anywhere else, but here I am terrified this afternoon. So I have decided to read my talk today to ensure that I keep it at exactly 15 minutes. The Ignatian spirituality I was exposed to as a student at the Ateneo was ideal for a young girl like myself, already imbued with a deep desire to serve others. I grew up with parents who both placed God and country before family and self. My mother was a journalist who played a big role during the EDSA revolution. She took me with her to the camps to interview FVR and JPE for her news story and insisted I sleep on EDSA for 2 nights so I would know how it feels to sacrifice for my country. My father served the government in the pre-Marcos years and during the Cory era and held positions in many international and local civic organizations. As a high school kid who had witnessed people power and the restoration of our nation's democracy firsthand, I was eager to do my part to love my God and my country. So when elections were held at our school for the very first time, I ran for president of the Student Council on a platform heavily influenced by the discourse of the times: participation, representation, democracy, and service above self. I was sent by my parents to the Ateneo because they felt I had the personality of an activist, and had I gone to UP, may have ended up in the mountains or in deep trouble. It turned out they made the right decision because I do believe I thrived in the Ateneo environment. And though I did not end up in trouble after college, I did end up in the mountains of Bukidnon as a Jesuit volunteer. At the Ateneo, one of the first stories I heard about St. Ignatius refers to the time immediately after his conversion. Accounts say he tried to emulate the saints he had read about in his Book of Saints. He practiced an extreme form of austerity. He lived in a cave, fasted religiously, and prayed for hours, even allowing his hair and fingernails to grow wild in rejection of his old vain self. Rather than bring him peace and contentment, however, this brought him despair. Later, he decided on a more moderate approach to spiritual practice, concluding that if your religiosity hampers your health, weakens you, and prevents you from working efficiently to achieve the goal of helping souls, then what good does this religiosity serve? I thought to myself, after having heard this story, this St. Ignatius guy is one cool person. And my young and idealistic self fell in love with him immediately. I never forget that joke about the practical Jesuits, which I know you've probably all heard by now. A Franciscan, a Dominican, and a Jesuit were celebrating Mass together when the lights suddenly go out in the church. The Franciscan praises the chance to live more simply. The Dominican gives a learned homily on how God brings light to the world, and the Jesuit goes to the basement to fix the fuse. This practical approach to spirituality is, I believe, among those which most appeals to believers. Ignatius viewed that spiritual life could exist beyond the four walls of a monastery, though radical in his day, and for which he was accused of heresy and imprisoned, nevertheless brought him many followers, especially those not inclined to the religious life, but who wanted nonetheless to be holy. Indeed, if the world were to be considered one big monastery, then God can be found and experienced in all things and in all people. This, to me, is the essence of Ignatian spirituality and the mindset to which I feel most drawn. If God were to be found in everything, then in effect, we cannot separate our spiritual life from all the other things we do. This is a very useful insight, especially in the context of government service, where, to my mind, there is a great disconnect between what goes on inside the four walls of a church and during Holy Mass and what goes on in the workplace. I remember very clearly that during my early days in City Hall, an elected official jokingly asked me, "Nagkakaroon ka na ba ng culture shock dito? Tingin mo magtatagal ka?" Another time, I received a complaint about some bribery in one of the departments. And when I brought the issue to my superior, telling him of the corruption complaint I received, he replied, "Huwag mong gagamitin yung salitang korupsyon dito sa City Hall. Matatamaan lahat." The question that is often raised for us Ateneo-trained public servants is this: what to do when confronted by situations in which our spiritual fundamentals are challenged? I encountered many such challenges in my early days as vice mayor, and this is where I took to heart what I had been trained to do in the Ateneo, to undergo a process of decision-making known as discernment, which is rooted in the life and writings of St. Ignatius himself. After having read the two books that changed his life, it is said that Ignatius was deciding whether to emulate the saints or to impress a certain lady. When he thought more deeply about the former option, he felt peace and consolation. When he thought about the latter, he felt dry. Through his feelings, he then came to realize the path to which God was leading him. My process of discernment was by no means easy. Just how practical and pragmatic should we allow ourselves to be here in government? In my college days, we were taught that Ignatian spirituality valued the desires of the heart over the intellect in the discernment process. In evaluating and interpreting our feelings, God speaks to us, shapes our lives, and helps us understand ourselves as well as the tasks we are called to do in the world. Ignatian spirituality also stresses the importance of detachment and indifference in discernment. Though I sometimes grapple with what that actually means, I take them to refer to freedom from all encumbrances that can act as a barrier between God and ourselves in the decision-making process. If we are not detached from love of wealth, love of honors, and a sense of entitlement or pride, then our self-interest will prevent us from making the decisions that we are meant to make for the common good. It is fortunate that my years spent as an archaeologist living in tents or huts in far-flung rural villages helped me to become accustomed to a life of simplicity. It is also very humbling to have been engaged in a profession to which nobody attaches any prestige or value, culture being at the lowest rung of everyone's hierarchy of needs. Thus, it was not difficult to free myself of baggage and listen to my heart when the discernment process so demanded. Guided by what my heart and emotions were telling me, I instead initiated a series of reforms in the city legislative department that included policies and processes for improved efficiency, transparency, accountability, and also greater public participation. Surprisingly, there was much support for those or from those whom we expected would be resistant, which simply proved to me that creating a healthy and supportive work environment can unleash the potential of our public servants towards greater dignity and integrity and better performance. At the end of our last term, the DILG awarded Quezon City the local legislative award for the most outstanding Sangguniang Panlunsod in the NCR for the very first time in our history. And we will be gunning for the national award in 2013. However, the workplace constitutes only a small part of the challenges we in public service need to hurdle. It is in confronting the many problems our city faces that our training in Ignatian spirituality truly helps. I find the concept of being a contemplative in action, one who is deeply engaged in the world and who seeks to help others find God in all things, most useful in public service. I have always been convinced that if we truly believe God is present in all people and in all things, we cannot accept a situation in which any individual is unable to reach his or her potential. We cannot tolerate any condition in which any person's rights are violated. We cannot help but work for the purpose of ensuring that all people truly feel God is in them and that He is in all things around them. We cannot but be champions of social justice. We are restless until we actually go out and start fixing things. Indeed, in Quezon City, there is still so much to fix. Last graduation season, I delivered a commencement speech at the Batasan National High School near Congress, and Yusek Lina Rivera knows this school very, very well. There were 2,638 kids graduating. The graduation had to be divided into 2 batches, a morning and an evening. The morning taking place at 5 a.m. because they did not have a covered court to cover them against the sun, and the evening at 7 at night, due to lack of space. The teachers were telling me that during the graduation, they did not even know the names of the students because they never had the opportunity to learn them because there were just too many kids. The principal told me that barely 10% of them would proceed to any form of higher education. For the rest, he could not say what their futures would be like. 2 months ago, I was doing a house-to-house campaign in Novaliches. At one shanty, I chanced upon a wake where a 6-month-old baby lay dead. Its mother was 19 years old, and this was her 4th child. Meanwhile, at the hovel next door, a woman handed over a baby to me and asked me if I wanted it. It belonged to her 14-year-old daughter, who has now run away from home with another boy, not the father of this child. And the grandmother was desperate to get rid of the baby. In the meantime, 35,000 families in Quezon City still live in danger zones along creeks and under bridges, but this will now be close to zero with the help of the MMDA. 67,000 families still have no access to safe water, and 25,000 families still have no sanitary toilets. HIV/AIDS is on the rise, and so is drug abuse. When faced with problems of this magnitude, it is sometimes difficult to see the presence of God in them and in the world. Yet Ignatian spirituality urges us to use our imaginations to see how things can work and not to dwell on the hopelessness of situations. Indeed, as God speaks to us through our heart's desires, He speaks to us through our imaginations and our dreams as well. Most importantly, we can focus on possibilities and opportunities Because we know we don't need to do things alone. Ignatian spirituality places great emphasis on collaboration and teamwork in working with others for others. Many of Quezon City's huge problems, for example, which many have long been dismissed as impossible to solve, are slowly being addressed thanks to the cooperative efforts of many agencies and organizations representing both the private and public sectors working together towards the common good. Thanks to partnerships with GK, Habitat for Humanity, the NHA, the Social Housing Finance Corporation, and numerous NGOs and POs, we are on our way to providing housing for our informal settler families who comprise about 30% of our 3 million people population. Although it will probably take another 50 years for us to achieve this goal, we are really happy that we started doing it at this time. We have partnerships in education with Teach for the Philippines and Miriam College, in facilitating payments of local fees via cell phones with USAID. And this one I'm really very proud of because very soon you will all be able to pay your taxes via your cell phones. And this will eliminate all of the problems associated with paying in the City Hall. And also we have partnerships with UPPGH in setting up computerized health management systems for all our 67 health centers. Earlier, I was saying it is only with the Ateneo that we don't have a partnership. But actually, I'm wrong. With the Ateneo School of Government, we have a program which will be initiated very soon of training our community leaders in good governance. Thousands of smaller community-based partnerships have likewise borne fruit to provide classrooms, livelihoods, nutrition, food, security, and health services to many of our people. As for the problems I outlined earlier, we are now in talks with TESDA to provide school-based skills and livelihood training programs at the Batasan National High School to provide some chance for graduating students to gain an employable skill while they are studying in high school. However, this problem we hope to solve when the K+12 program is completely implemented. And as for our teenage mothers, my office, together with several NGOs, are soon launching a program called Batang Ina, to bring these kids back to school and equip them with the proper skills and values to raise their children properly. This year, as our city gets ready to celebrate its 75th founding anniversary, we are preparing ourselves for bigger things. As we continue to find solutions to the social and environmental problems that our city continues to face, we are also gearing up to be among the region's prime business and tourism destinations. During our last term, we crafted the master plans and passed the ordinances that would see this big dream into fruition. It is unlikely that many of us who worked on these policies will be around when they are fully implemented and their benefits enjoyed by our people. Yet as servant leaders, it is our duty to work in the here and now for something greater than ourselves and larger than anything we can ever imagine. It is our duty to dream big and plan big for our people. Many times people ask me this question: do you really enjoy what you do? The question often arises in the context of very stereotypical views of the not so pleasant things politicians do, like visit wakes and attend birthdays, baptisms, and weddings of people they do not even know. And they see the lines of people outside my office seeking solutions to their problems, and they cannot possibly fathom how I could consider this fun and enjoyable and worthwhile. My response to them has always been this: yes, although it may come as a surprise to you, I enjoy what I do very much. But this work is not for everyone. It is only for those who find in it a real vocation. I believe God is at work in all the things I do as part of my job. It was in a wake that I met the NGO head that is now the partner of my office in our teenage health program. It is in attending wakes in the innermost parts of the community that I see the pathwalks that need to be paved and the light posts that need to be fixed or provided. Social gatherings give me an opportunity to hear more about a community's problems and needs. And the lines of people outside my office, well, if they weren't there, I would be very concerned.